tune is pretty familiar to many of us. We are so pleased to welcome Lisa Rinaman, the Riverkeeper. She is the chief advocate and public voice for the St. Johns River. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Welcome, Lisa.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much. I'm deeply touched to be part of your service this morning, and I'm just moved by the words and music and the intentions that were set. Thank you for inviting me today. Reflecting back and preparing for our visit today, I really wanted to underscore just our commitment not only to the St. Johns River, but everything we do is rooted in focusing on future generations as well. And so if anything is I've learned in 2020 and moving beyond 2020 is this work is not only for our river, it's for our children. And I look forward to visiting with you today about how we can work together. In 2020, many of us found solace in nature, in our flowing waters. It was evident by the hundreds of photos we received from our members who were out and about, enjoying and really getting back in touch with nature with their families. And I think that's something that creates a solid foundation for this important work that we do moving forward. In 2020 also left, the experience also left indelible scars due to shock and fear, strength and grit, so many different experiences that we had. Personally, I fall into both categories. In early 2020, a diagnosis of stage 3 breast cancer nearly took me to my knees. Fortunately, the St. Johns River ran beside me right outside my window at St. Vincent's Mayo Clinic and gave me the strength to fight this while my great medical team provided life-saving treatment. And I'm happy to say I'm cancer-free today. But what it did do is make me really dig deeper than I ever had. And deep truths were revealed that I think were always there, but really resounded my focus on two things that are the most important work that I will ever do as a human being, as a person, as well as a riverkeeper. And number one priority every single day is raising smart, kind, good humans. They are the future stewards of this work and this earth, and also to provide them the world that God intended them to have: clean air, clean water, and beautiful trees that give us the very air that we breathe. It's my absolute commitment and most welcome challenge to raise kind, solid humans. It's a lot of fun, and raising two boys also brings its own specific challenges that I relish in every single day. Our rivers will sustain us if we sustain our rivers, and I believe it's our commitment, and God gave us this earth for us to make sure that we protect it so it provides for future generations. And that is the grounded truth that our commitment at St. Johns Riverkeeper begins every single day. It's our commitment to protect and defend our springs, our river, and our St. Johns, not only for us and for all of you, but most importantly for our children and their grandchildren. It's all about future generations and making sure it's sustainable for the long haul. And we do that in everything we do, from our education work to our investigation, our advocacy, the things that we do to seek solutions. So we're not just saying this is wrong, we needed to say this is right, and this is how we can work together to make sure that we're raising awareness, engaging and involving citizens, but most importantly, making change that this river can survive and provide us all the joys it does today for many, many years to come. And we do that work through our coalitions. This is not something one person, one organization can do. And so we focus on things like working with Waterkeepers Florida. There's now 15 Waterkeepers in the state. And so it's phenomenal the amount of energy, expertise, and passion that comes together working with our Waterkeepers. And it goes beyond that. It's working with other state organizations and working here locally on resiliency with Resilient Jacks, Riverfront Parks Now, And one of our most important initiatives is freeing the Ocklawaha River. And our river, it's not, again, it's so critical of importance. If the one thing we can do every day is to build the river's voice over time, that's the most important thing, because it's all about making sure not only we value the river, we get out and we experience it, but also that we're taking a stand. One of the easiest things every single day that we can all do, and what I believe is an obligation protecting this earth, is being river friendly. And the good news about being river friendly, it's also being earth friendly. So it protects not only the river, but protects our earth for the long haul. Doing things like conserving energy, conserving water, making sure that we're planting native plants and using little to no fertilizer so we don't have additional runoff. Making sure that we're not leaving a footprint wherever we go of unnecessary pollution. And it is our deep obligation to make sure that we do that every single day. I agree with the Native American sentiment that we did not inherit this earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And so it's our responsibility to be river friendly, to be earth friendly, to make sure ultimately that we leave this world better than we found it for our children moving forward. But individual stewardship is not enough to protect our water for future generations. Even if every single person in our watershed was being river friendly, it's not enough to collectively protect our rivers. And that's why we have to focus on advocacy to elected leaders to ensure that they provide the protections in place to make sure that we are protecting not only our individual footprints, but that we have sustainable policies in place. Those policies need to be protective and restorative policies. And not only that they're in place, they must be enforced. If anyone on with us today lives on Pottsburg Creek, there's an unfortunate example right now with extreme sedimentation and dirt erosion due to just lack of enforcement. And so we have to have the good policies in place, but they also have to be enforced. And that's where citizen advocacy and eyes and ears on the river can help us make sure we have that enforcement. The second thing is we have to make sure our public money is invested in restoring and sustaining our natural assets instead of squandering them to fuel unbridled growth. Right now, our waterways are not keeping up. There's too much pollution. And we're growing at 1,000 people every single day in the state of Florida. And so if we're gonna have growth, we have to have protective policies. Right now, we're failing in both of those categories. So that's how we can stand up collectively to give our river a voice, where phone calls and emails and just having this very conversation today will make a significant difference. Some of the challenges that we touched on in the video you saw just a bit later is saltwater intrusion. Saltwater intrusion is continuing to creep further and further upriver, meaning it's going further south since our river flows north. And that's due to many things. It's due to dredging, sea level rise, overuse of our aquifer, as well as water withdrawals in central Florida. This saltwater intrusion also has rising water, so you're seeing more flooding, but we're also seeing significant loss of submerged grasses and wetlands. And these are important because not only are they critical habitat for so many of our species that are recreationally and commercially fished, they're also the kidneys of the St. John's. And so as we lose them, we lose that water filtration. And so the river has a harder time of filtering out pollution and protecting itself at the same time more pollution is going in. So this is the canary in the coal mine. If we can't protect these wetlands and grasses, we're going to continue to see loss of habitat, which is important for us in Northeast Florida from a commercial fisheries perspective, as well as quality of life. But we're also going to see more blue-green algae outbreaks due to nutrient pollution. And so our river needs you to make sure we're standing up and ensuring that our elected officials know that we value these waterways, and it's our duty and our obligation to protect them. So the three areas that we're focusing on Coming out of this pandemic and moving forward and building on from the past 20 years of work is activating resiliency now. Hurricane Irma was a wake-up call for Northeast Florida, and we are seeing a lot of fantastic work come out of the City Council-led resiliency committees. In fact, they just released earlier this year their final report, which has 100 pages of sustainable policies. But the key now is implementation. We need to make sure that these are implemented moving forward, and we're taking swift action. The good news is the city just hired their first chief resiliency officer. She comes from New Orleans and has an impressive resume, and she begins her work on Monday. And so look forward to working with her to make sure we're doing things not only to address rising waters and the pollution and the damage they bring, but ultimately climate change in its entirety, what we can do in Northeast Florida together to make a difference, to protect the river and to protect this earth. As I mentioned, one of the most important restoration projects that we have available to us is freeing the Ocklawaha River. The Ocklawaha River was dammed in 1968 as part of the failed Cross-Florida Barge Canal. And unfortunately, that severed the natural connection from the largest freshwater springs, the Silver Springs, to the St. Johns River and drowned out 20 additional springs that provide critical freshwater flow to the St. Johns and its 100-mile estuary. So we're working with the Free the Ocklawaha Coalition to make sure we reunite the Ocklawaha River, Silver Springs, the St. Johns as part of the Great Florida Riverway. And we believe this is coming to a head based on more than 60 organizations working to ensure that this project moves forward, which many have been working on for more than 50 years. This is of significant importance to the St. Johns River estuary because that additional 150 million gallons a day plus of freshwater flow will not only help offset that saltwater intrusion that's moving further upstream, it's also clearer and cooler water, which will help with the submerged grasses that have disappeared after Irma. It'll support the restoration of those eelgrass communities. It helps offset dark water that has turbidity due to rainfall in these areas. It improves water quality, reduces algae blooms, and support our commercial and recreational fisheries. So even though this dam is 100 miles away, it is of significant importance to the health of the St. Johns River estuary and one of our #1 priorities. And then third is getting the green out. We have worked more than 20 years to reduce nutrient pollution in the St. Johns. I'm happy to report that we've seen a significant reduction of nitrogen. It's one of the two types of nutrients that fuel these outbreaks. But sadly, we're seeing an increase in phosphorus. And part of that is due to the special protections that were given to South Florida that prohibit the land disposal of sewage sludge, also known as biosolids, in that area due to phosphorus runoff. And so now they're trucking it to the headwaters of the St. Johns, and we're seeing a significant increase in phosphorus in the St. Johns River. And the sad thing is, this is not only a new source of pollution, it's a permanent source of pollution. And so we're working with many groups to ensure that all Florida waters have the same protections to get the green out and make sure we don't have these toxic blue-green algae outbreaks. But wrapping it all up, while these things seem overwhelming and sometimes like we're the David and Goliath scenario, we do believe that together we can make a difference. I know there's several folks here today that we've worked with, and we have had successes that have gotten us to a really important point because we know we can make change. We know if we stand up, we can make a difference. And so I welcome this opportunity to visit with you all today on our priorities and our commitment to the St. Johns, and appreciate the opportunity to work with each of you, invite you to our website at stjohnsriverkeeper.org to find out more, as well as I will stick around afterwards to answer any questions that you may have. But thank you so much for your time today. It's been a very moving experience.